Hello, and welcome to Lost Gems 9. This is my first ever Lost Gems video. If you're wondering what happened to the other 8, well, you'd have to go back to my website and read them. The website is gamingvisionnetwork.blogspot.com. Anyway, on to the main feature today. Today's Lost Gem is the Gargoyles Quest franchise. But before we get into the game, we have to go back way back into the mid-80s and check out a game that was released by Capcom in the arcades.
And that game was Ghosts and Goblins, released by Capcom back in 1985. In Ghosts and Goblins, you play a knight by the name of Arthur who has to go through a horde of undead creatures in order to rescue the princess Pin-Pin. One of the monsters you encounter in this game is a particular red gargoyle by the name of Firebrand, or the Red Armorer, as known in Japan. 4 years after the game's release, Nintendo unveils the Game Boy to the world, and that's when Capcom decides to take a big gamble. A year later, after the Game Boy's debut, Capcom releases Makai Murai Gaiden for the Game Boy, or otherwise known as Gargoyles Quest in America. The game gives Firebrand his first starring role as a hero, as opposed to being the villain in the Ghosts and Goblins franchise. Here he is given the task of saving the Ghoul Realm from falling under control of the evil King Bragan. Upon starting the game, you'll notice that Gargoyles Quest includes both RPG elements and side-scrolling platform action stages. In fact, its gameplay design is very similar to Zelda 2 for the NES. RPG elements include running around on the world map, random enemy encounters, item collecting such as power-ups, vials, or health extensions. The platforming stages are all done in classical 2D side-scrolling. As Firebrand, you are able to fly, cling to walls, shoot fire at your enemies, and engage in boss battles. Boss battles were exceptionally fun and unique because you were able to use elements of the stage as cover or to give you an advantage. They also provided a great challenge for players. Gargoyles Quest also used a password system that allowed you to continue your progress from various locations in the game itself. Overall, Gargoyles Quest was a very unique game. It was fun, it had great graphics at the time, and provided a good challenge for players. In 1992, Capcom released a sequel for both the Game Boy and the NES. The NES version allowed for better graphics and sprites that didn't take up a portion of the screen like they did on the Game Boy version. A couple of changes were made for the sequel, however. No longer were there any random enemy encounters in the world map, and another was the addition of the Magic Tornado spell that transported you to other towns. One thing that remained, however, was the use of a password system. At the time of the game's release, the majority of games out on the NES had a battery pack for saving your progress. But just like its predecessor, Gargoyles Quest 2's password system only allowed you to continue from select points in the game. GQ2's gameplay remained virtually intact from the first, with improved graphics that helped enhance the gameplay experience. However, one of the big complaints of the game is how short and easy it was. An experienced gamer could easily breeze through this game in merely an hour, and the boss battles were mildly easy compared to the first. Despite these flaws, however, Gargoyles Quest 2 was still a very good game. Unfortunately, it was overshadowed by Capcom's other franchises like Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, DuckTales, and the Mega Man franchise. However, Capcom was willing to give the franchise one more shot on a brand new platform. In 1990, Nintendo released the Super Nintendo in Japan, and a year later in North American territories. Immediately, Capcom went to work, releasing games like Street Fighter II, Final Fight, and King of Dragons for the system. In 1994, Capcom finally released the third game in the Gargoyles Quest franchise, Demon's Crest. The game sported better graphics and music that fit the dark, eerie atmosphere of the Ghoul Realm. The gameplay also received a huge upgrade. Firebrand had brand new abilities that allowed him to fly ceaselessly. He could use new gargoyle forms after receiving magical crests, and he could cast spells. One of the other major changes they made to the game was Capcom's decision to let Firebrand fly to every location in the game instead of walking there, similar to the airship in Final Fantasy VI. Demon's Crest also had multiple endings depending on what you accomplished in the game. You had a bad, a good, a normal, and a true ending. However, there were two major complaints made about the game. The first was Capcom's continued support of a password system instead of opting for the battery save system. This irritated many fans of the first two games, who found the save system convenient after playing games like A Link to the Past and Super Mario World. The second major complaint was about the game's difficulty. While the first game of the franchise had a decent difficulty level, Demon's Crest annoyed the hell out of people with multiple deaths due to new level designs, gameplay elements, and really hard boss fights. You don't believe me? Look at how many times I just died before I fought this guy. Aside from these complaints, Demon's Crest was still a stellar game. However, it was the last to star Firebrand in a hero role. To this day, there hasn't been any news of a new Gargoyles Quest game in development. Instead, Capcom has decided to let Firebrand take guest starring roles in other games like SNK vs. Capcom Chaos for the Neo Geo, Namco x Capcom, and SNK vs. Capcom for the Neo Geo Pocket. Capcom did, however, bring him back as a villain in the PSP port of Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins in 2006. In fact, you can see him on the front cover of the box art. However, this doesn't give us any indication if there will ever be a sequel for Demon's Crest or the Gargoyles Quest franchise in general.
Of course, there is the possibility that it may end up on the Wii's Virtual Console one day. If it does, it could renew interest in the franchise, and Capcom may opt to make a sequel or a retro sequel similar to that of Mega Man 9 and Bionic Commando. And that's why we're talking about it in today's edition of Lost Gems, because I believe this franchise deserves a second chance. Thanks for watching. This is Fight Club Hub signing off and saying keep on gaming.